Jacob, one of our original SUP members from initial 2018 season, is back. He graduated 3 years ago now. Does that sound right?
Yeah,
Okay.
2021.
So he was a part of the first visual effects live action capstone that we did at Syracuse and TRF. So kind of like set the bar pretty high for the rest. Jonathan's here too. Might have a few people from that project joining. Anyway, so Jacob is here. He's been freelancing around New York City and the Boston area in visual effects since he graduated. So he's going to talk about kind of like freelancing in general and kind of like working with clients, side projects, and also working at a company and kind of like what is the difference between all that and things to look out for. So, Jacob, take it away.
All right, thank you. Let's see here. Can you guys see my screen? All
Yeah.
right.
Yep.
Just to preface this, I am by no means an expert on this. I'm just going to share what I know and my experience. And fortunately, we have some people here that are the true experts. So I'll refer you to those people and their resources as we get closer to the end of this. But yeah, let's get started. So visual effects freelancing, I guess you could apply this to editing or anything kind of like that. But I'm going to talk specifically, I guess, about visual effects because that's what I'm experienced in. So who am I? I'm a visual effects compositor with around 3 to 4 years of experience in the industry. I've worked at studios, mainly working on TV shows, some movies. A few examples are The Gilded Age, Evil, Walking Dead, Dead City, a couple of the different of the Walking Dead TV shows, and The Whale. And then freelance, I've mostly done commercial projects, and a couple of movies as well. Um, Progressive, Wayfair, Fig Newton, Alaska Airlines, just kind of random stuff, but that's kind of what this industry is. You just work on random stuff and it's fun. So my software background is mainly Nuke. Started with like Fusion and After Effects, and I'm getting a lot more into Houdini now. I also have a lot of experience working with Premiere and DaVinci Resolve, and then some other things like Blender here and there. Um, so those are kind of all the stuff that I'm always working with. So yeah. To Before I really get into it, I just wanted to kind of give a reality check a bit. Um, in terms of comparing school to the industry. Um, and with my little meme on the side there, I said also school under industry because I feel like school is hard, it's this beast in its own way still. So I don't want to like totally belittle it. It's just a different experience. So I kind of want to lay out the differences between the two. So obviously with school, you have, assignments where you're given instructions, like pretty clear instructions, hopefully, from your professor. And then you have all these resources where you can refer back to everything you've been working on. You could talk to your professor, get help, stuff like that. Um, in general, you have a lot of opportunities to push yourself and work on different things and learn new skills, whether it's your assignments, again, clubs and organizations, or just personal projects or other people's projects that you kind of hop in on from people that you know, your peers. You're also mostly working on like a pretty carefully curated schedule with the 15-week semester. Your professors are kind of laying everything out in a way that's not going to overwhelm you, and there's just a lot of planning involved there. So even though it does get hectic, you always go into each semester knowing when the points where it's going to be really hectic are, usually, midterms and finals. Um, and then when you're doing work, you can kind of do it whenever. I know not everyone is going to do work at like 2 a.m., but when you're in school, you at least have that opportunity. So when it comes to the industry, there's really no, it's just the opposite in a lot of ways. Like you don't really get instructions. You'll be given a task, but you won't, people don't have the time to kind of lay things out for you that clearly. When you start in a position, they will do more to help you, but you're still expected to kind of pick up things on your own and just kind of run with it. So, and with that, like I said, people are busy. You are busy. People aren't going to have the time to really handhold you as well. They'll always say like asking questions is good, but you don't want to ask too many, take up too much time. So you want to really have a certain amount of knowledge and confidence to push you there and know when to ask questions. You have to really like spend a lot of time doing your own research, looking up things online, figuring things out on your own. Um, and you're not going to always have those resources available. Whereas at school, you have different people you can kind of rely on or tap into. So it's a bit daunting in that way, but it's not like those resources are completely gone. It's not like the rug is pulled out underneath you completely. Um, and then talking about workload and schedules again, it's kind of different, and I'll get more into this between studios and freelance, but with school, like I said, it's a 15 week semester, everything's planned out accordingly. But in the industry, working at a studio, it kind of varies. It'll just be depending on how many shows you're working on. If you're working on at a studio, you're working on multiple projects at once, and they could be overlapping. So it's crunch period followed by crunch period, or then all of a sudden you'll have like nothing for a few weeks, and then it'll just be crazy again. So it's really unpredictable. Um, and sometimes if especially now with how the industry is post COVID, you could be working for a studio halfway across the world. One of my old supervisors literally did live halfway in Singapore while working with us in New York. So um, you could be in that position and you're just working at weird hours and weird times, but it's still on that set schedule. So you can't really just kind of do work at 2 a.m. If everyone else is on the clock normally. And then when it comes to freelance, you're kind of just dragged around by whatever you commit yourself to, and the hours are just all over the place, and you might not have work for a little bit here and there, or you might have way too much work and you kind of signed up more than you can handle. So I think the big thing to take away from this is this industry is just it's a roller coaster in general. Some positions are more stable, but uh, it can get pretty hectic, and I think it's fun. It's also pretty draining, but it's just a bit different from school. So I just wanted to kind of, you know, highlight that and bring that up in the first place. Um, and also, working in the industry, you have to work on a team usually, unless you're doing freelance, and learn how to be, codependent. People are going to rely on you. You have to rely on other people. You have some of that when you're working on projects in school, but it's to a whole different level here. And there's no fallback plan. It's not just you being graded on an assignment for your work. It's, the livelihood of the company and other people's jobs. So it's a bit more weight to it. And you just have to advocate for yourself in terms of if you're having issues, you're not going to have a professor or someone to kind of help you out. That's always going to be talking down on you. You really have to speak up, and if you want to be challenged, you have to tell people that you have to ask for harder work to, progress. Otherwise, people will kind of just keep you in the same place if they see that, circumstances work out, that they, will benefit from just keeping you in that position and not working on, harder things. So now to talk strictly just about the industry, I wanted to compare freelancing and not freelancing. It's not mutually exclusive. You can kind of really do both. And that's what I have done. It can get kind of hectic if you do both, but there are some, pretty distinct differences. Like I just touched on with freelance, you set your own hours and you have a fluctuating rate per project, depending on how intense the project is, how much work it's gonna be, who the client is. You can you're setting your rate. So it's not always gonna be the same. Um, you're often working solo unless it's a big project and you're bringing on other people, which means that you are also going to be doing a lot more than just being a specific role. Like if you're a 3D artist, you might be doing a lot more than just being a 3D artist. You're going to have to be your own producer, your own supervisor doing QC. You're gonna have to handle all the IT issues. Um, and I think for someone like me, who's always enjoyed taking on all the aspects of filmmaking and loved making my own stuff, loved working on different parts of the project, like all pre-production, post, and production. I really enjoy that, but it's something to consider that you don't have to, if you're working at a studio, you're not really gonna have to worry about a lot of things. You can kind of just focus on that one thing. Um, so you also have to, the last thing is you also have to teach yourself a lot of things because I'll touch on this later, but things are going to come up, projects are going to come up, and you're not going to know how to do stuff. But if you want to progress and keep moving forward, you have to just figure things out on the fly a lot more, I think, than at a studio where you can ask someone for help if they know how to do something, if they already have a script set up for a certain effect you're trying to do. You can always reach out. So working by yourself is a lot riskier, but it can also be a lot more rewarding in that way. So when it comes to a studio, obviously you're going to be working set hours, usually like 10 to 6, 9 to 5, whatever. And you're going to have a set rate or salary depending on your contract or if you're full-time. So that's good to have that stability. You're also going to always be working on a team and mainly be focusing on a specific role, like I said. So if you're like me, when I was a compositor at a studio, I was only doing compositing. That doesn't mean I'm always working on the same exact shot, or type of shot. It was still pretty varied within that, but that was my role. And there were people that did match move tracking, people that did any CG stuff, any effects. Everyone has their own places there. And so that allows you to work on a lot cooler stuff because there's people that are specialized in all these things and you can work as a team to build some really cool things. But you have less ability to kind of float around and do different stuff. So like I said, it's more stable working at a studio, which is really nice. But you just have less freedom there. And you are able to learn things from others because you're going to be working with people that are 20, 30 years deep into the industry and they have such a wealth of knowledge that you can tap into. And that's why I think that working at a studio is extremely important. And I don't think it's completely, in a lot of cases, you have to become to get a job at a studio, you're gonna have to have, some experience, whether it's doing some freelance projects at a school. Usually coming out of school, you're not always gonna get a job immediately in a studio. So whatever projects you can work on doing freelance, that's really gonna help you get to that next step to be hired. It's gonna make you more competitive. So I think that to get to the point in freelance in which you're, working on the really cool stuff and making money to sustain yourself and survive, I think it's pretty important to have that experience at a studio because no matter how much you learn in school, no matter how much you learn on your own, it's never going to compare to all the things you're going to learn at a studio. Um, I was told this by Shayna and many people before I started working at a studio, and I didn't deny it or think it wasn't going to be true, but it is true. I learned an insane amount even within the first month. Like I became such a better artist just in terms of knowledge of Nuke alone, or just like a given software, like having good habits as a compositor, having um, a good understanding of theory and how things work, how to be efficient when I'm working. And I think one of the most important things is how to QC, like knowing what to look for. That's one of the biggest things because you can work on, you can look at something, know it's wrong, but not know why. And when you have supervisors that are constantly telling you, check this, or you need to be checking this all the time, or you just even observing their notes, you kind of retain that information and understand what to look for. And if you can QC your shots to death, then they're just going to be better and better. Um, so it's also a really valuable experience in that you're gonna learn, learn the pipeline, learn all these different departments and how the industry works. Um, Obviously in school, you learn about kind of the bigger picture, like how there's all these different departments, how things go, like projects are bid, brought in, and then awarded, and people start working on it. It goes from department to department, but when you're there working in the studio, you'll understand a lot more to it and how like even just how files are sent between departments. I think that's like an important thing in understanding. Um, these are all things that are pretty specific and you wouldn't really, it's not really, there's no value, I guess, in learning it in school because until you're there, it's not really gonna click, but having it moving past that, past working in a studio, because there's so many things while working at a studio that I witnessed that I didn't need to know, like it didn't apply to my job there, but now working on bigger freelance gigs on my own, whether I'm just by myself or bringing on other people, I'm able to tap into those things that I was seeing and applying that to my workflow. To make things, whether make it more efficient or allow me to take on more complex projects or just bigger projects overall. Um, and like I said before, you work in a team environment, which I think is really important to have people depending on you, to have that pressure. I think it's a really positive pressure. And um, Also you're just kind of given that you're working with good supervisors, good people around you, you're often going to be given work that it fits you. And that's often done just out of necessity. They're hiring you for a purpose and they're going to give you work that uh, they see that you're going to be able to do. Um, and oftentimes this work is going to increasingly get a bit harder because they want to push you to be able to take on harder tasks and kind of skill up. So I think that when you're working on freelance projects, it can kind of be up and down. You could be working, like I could be working on a really easy, paint job where I'm just removing a bunch of signs for some commercial. And then the next week I could be doing like a CG composite, and that could be like a totally different thing. And you never know what's gonna come to you. You could be doing a bunch of work for months at a time that isn't really pushing you, it's just busy work for you. Or you could be, and then suddenly you could be doing something that's way out of your wheelhouse. So working at a studio, it's definitely you're gonna learn a lot fast, but it's also at like a good rate. And I think that's really important. So um, working at a studio will kind of give you all of these skills and all this knowledge to be able to be like a really strong freelancer, and actually be able to sustain yourself. So I see a lot of value in doing that, and I don't mean to, in this talk, say like anything negative about either side. I think that they're both great ways of existing in this industry. Um, So as I was saying before, I think that coming out of school, it's hard to, like, when you're in school, there's all these opportunities to work on things to add to your demo reel, or increase your skills. And like I have friends that are out of school now that are just trying to work on things that are not sure what to do because if you're not making your own projects, there's really not many opportunities to kind of skill up and keep progressing. So I really encourage people that once they're done with school that they do like pursue working on their own personal projects or getting involved with other people's. Because I think that it's like the healthiest way to learn a new skill. There's not much pressure involved. If it's a personal project, it's not for money. You don't have to worry about, not delivering. And I think that's good because that lets you become more creative, like push yourself in new ways. You can experiment more. And honestly, the points where I've felt most motivated in my entire career are just when I'm working on a personal project and I'm just really excited about how it's turning out. So I think it's something that people that have been in the industry for 20, 30 years, they're still doing that. I see them on LinkedIn all the time, posting all these little experiments that they're doing, just trying new things. So it's not something that goes away. And I think that the sooner that you, as an artist, make this a routine thing for yourself and really push yourself to do personal projects. It doesn't have to be like a whole short film. It could just be a single shot you're trying to replicate or do a cool new effect. Um, Whatever it is, just I really highly recommend it because it's gonna help you in the long run. It's gonna help you get a job at a studio. It's gonna help you get a client for a freelance gig because once you put this project out there, you never know who's going to see it and say, oh, that's really cool. I want this person to do that same thing for my project. Um,
Jacob, there's a question in the chat from Rowan. Do you see
I
it?
was just about to ask. Yeah. Any tips? Yeah, I totally get that. This project in the bottom right of the screen is actually a project that Jonathan and I had shot in 2021, right after I graduated, and it was a big project, and I got hired for my first studio job like immediately after we shot it. So I didn't get much time to work on it. And since then, it's been like just slowly chipping away. I think the easiest way to stay motivated is to not do a short film or like a longer, like a big project. It's really exciting, really fun. Like I've always enjoyed making longer projects like that. But I think if you're trying to focus on doing something that's one exciting to work on, but also increase your skills and give you, increase your experience, I recommend doing something that maybe is just like a really short, like 10-second thing, something that's like a one shot thing. I can show an example right now. I had done, like I had said earlier, I've been learning Houdini for like the past year, and a few months ago, it was like the fall, I shot something where I just wanted to integrate like a concrete shattering effect, and integrate that into live action footage because I'd been experimenting a lot, but actually rendering it out and doing from pre to post with Houdini and the effects was something that I really wanted to challenge myself and push through and finally do. So I just shot this like literally 15-second mock ad at least, where all I did was just kick this ball against the wall, as you can see, and the wall shatters a little bit, and that was it. So I could have made it like a whole super long thing where I had a bunch of shots where I did this, but I really just kept it simple here. And this took me a while. Like I ran into a lot of issues with just like things not working. It probably like I had to even come back to it after a month just because I got busy. But I finally finished it and it was I like kind of like exploded off from that point and now I have, well, I'll talk about it later, but have done my first freelance gig with working with Houdini with a client, and it's turned out really good. The client loved it, and I wouldn't have been able to do that if I didn't just push myself to do this little project. And once it kind of just started to come together, I started to I remember the true importance of that and how it could be so like self-fulfilling and working on these small little things. So hopefully that kind of answers your question. I don't think there's like always a clear way on how to keep yourself, engaged with it, because sometimes I know like stuff doesn't work, like things break when working with computers and software. There's a million problems, but I think the best thing is to just keep it simple. And you can always kind of push yourself further with that. Like just keep the scope simple in the first place, and then you can go running off with it from there. All right, so. All right, so now I'm going to talk about like the kind of the steps of freelance that I always go through, or that I guess in general that you go through. So, um, this one's, I guess, a constant thing. This isn't really a step, I guess. But starting with freelance, I think the hardest thing people like other artists ask me is how do you get clients in the first place? I think that the most rewarding thing for me getting clients in general is just staying active and posting things like personal projects, like I've just been talking about online. Uh, I've gotten people reach out to me just because of that. People that have nothing to do with film, or people that work on uh, commercials. Like you never have any idea of how it's going to turn out. So especially if you're working on these projects already, just post them on LinkedIn, post them on ArtStation, whatever you can, because people are always going to be on there looking. Post it on Instagram. Your friends might know someone who needs something. Like, just put your work out there, and things will come to you. You can also reach out to local businesses. I've reached out all my connections in Boston. I lived in New York before this, and I didn't really know anyone in Boston, but I reached out to just kind of all of the post houses around here, and anyone that kind of worked in media, just kind of like a quick little introduction about what I can do, and if they have any projects that need help, to let me know. And that's gotten me a lot of clients, just because people, like, you never know who's going to need what, probably especially with things like commercials. Like, things will come up and they're going to need someone that has your skill set, and they'll add you to the roster or the list, or if they don't even have a list, they'll just immediately reach out to you. So that's been super beneficial to me. And I think it's better than just knocking on people's door on LinkedIn. I'm just messaging them and say like, hey, I'm this, here's my name, like I do this, whatever. I feel like that isn't as as good of a way to kind of get work necessarily. Um, but with that, you can, like, people in your area, I think it is beneficial to just introduce yourself, and not in a way of asking people for a job, but just putting your name out there, showing interest in wanting to work on things. This is like a very varied industry. There's so many different specializations. Not everyone knows how to do everything. It's legitimately impossible. So people are always looking for someone with your skill. Uh, so just get to know as many people as you can in your area, wherever you live, that do that, because it really comes in handy. I've had so many people reach out to me, and I reach out to them just because I don't know how to do a certain thing, and I know someone, like someone will reach out to me asking, do you know how to do, like, can you 3D model this city? And I don't know how to do that, but I can reach out to a close friend who does. Um, and using all these things is how I've kind of built my network. I know some of it might seem obvious, but uh, I think just don't take for granted like how your skill set is not everyone is, I don't know how to phrase this. Not everyone knows how to do what you do. So people are always going to be looking for someone to be I feel like I'm running down a rabbit hole here. anyways, I think it's just, I feel like I completely lost my train of thought. Sorry about that. Anyways, connect with people in your area. There's people that are working in productions that are gonna need your help, and there's gonna be points where you're gonna need their help. So that's how it's been helpful to me, and it's really let me grow my clientele base. Sorry about that. I just get off track sometimes. Anyways, back to freelancing. So let's say you land your first gig. The first thing that's gonna happen is the client's gonna reach out to you and they're gonna say, hey, I have this project. Do you want to meet? Or they'll lay out kind of the basic details of it. And from there, they might say, hey, do you want to hop on a call? And you'll meet with them, talk about the details of the work, their timeline, what their creative vision is. They might have some reference they want to play for you. Who knows? It can be kind of anything. I've had people show me YouTube videos of an effect they want to achieve, or they have a mock-up drawing, just like I have in the corner from the Ghostbusters thing. And sometimes, a lot of the time, people will have things that are already shot, already done. Sometimes it'll be in pre-production still, so it could be anything. I think that depending on what you work on, if it's compositing based mainly, that's where you'll run into a lot more projects where it'll already be shot and they need you to fix something after the fact, like fix it in post. But if you're working on more creative things like, CG or animation, those are going to be done in pre-production, so they'll approach you at an earlier stage, which is helpful because then you usually have more time to plan things out and do some R&D. So like I said, they're gonna tell you about their project, you're gonna run through things, you're gonna tell them about what you know how to do, talk about your expertise, what you can provide to the project, share your availability, talk about you don't have to go into like super in depth about your details, but just let them know like, hey, I'm gonna be pretty busy. I'll be open for these next 2 weeks, but after that, I'm gonna be really busy. You don't want to like lie about your availability just to get a job, being like just to seem busy. In just the same way that you don't want to lie about being completely open when you have other work to do. It's just not going to work out for you. You never know what's going to crop up. Things might go wrong. Things are going to go sideways. So you don't want to dig yourself in a hole from the beginning. So just be careful of that. Also involved with this, and I'm going to talk about it in the next slide, but doing R&D, I think, could be really helpful, especially for something that's a bit more complex, like more creative, whether it's like a CG character, some FX. Usually this is not going to be paid. Unless you're working at a studio, you're not going to be paid for doing R&D. So just be wary of that. But I tend to watch breakdowns or any tutorials for work that's similar to the effect that the client wants, and then just run some tests with that, see what I can achieve, see how quickly I can do it. I even do this sometimes for simple effects. It's going to take more experience. So if, for example, a client comes to me and is asking for me to remove something from, like, do a beauty cleanup or remove like a beauty mark from this person's neck or something, I might, if I have the time, just hop into Nuke for like 5-10 minutes and just kind of do a quick, like, mess around with it quickly and just kind of gauge from that how long it's going to take, and then I'll build that into my bid. You're not going to always have that luxury. And as more you do things, the more you're going to just know off the top of your head how long it's going to take. But there are cases in which you have the chance to do R&D, and I think it can be very helpful towards building your bid. So a big thing that comes up here is, especially when you're starting freelance, is that a lot of the time you're going to be given work that you like, people are going to come to you and ask you for things that you don't actually know how to do. And so that could be very nerve-wracking, and it's actually like a dance you have to do. Because you have to, with freelance, you have to be selling your skills. You have to be confident and make the client feel like they can trust you and that, they want to award this work to you. But a lot of the time you might have never done this exact specific thing. Just because this industry you could be working on anything. You could be working on zombies, or you could be working on anything. I don't even know, like removing someone's wig line. Like that's what I did a lot. Like just random stuff that you've never even thought of. So you just have to kind of take the information as it comes and quickly assess like how you might be able to do it. And if needed, as you know, the client will see you as the expert in this thing. That's why they're coming to you. So if you feel like, okay, I can actually take on this work, but there's certain aspects to how they want it done that I think are going to make it either really a lot more challenging for me or straight up impossible for me to do, given my time and my experience. I found it that sometimes I can kind of encourage them to do it in take a different approach to the effect that will still satisfy their creative vision, but not drain my resources or put me in a really tough position. Because I still want to be awarded the work, but I don't want to put them in a position of where now they're not going to get what they were asking for. I'm going to ruin that relationship, and then I'm going to look like an idiot. So just be realistic with it. You have to kind of, if you're going to take on work that you don't know how to do, you have to, especially if it's something like, for me, and I'm going to get to this example close to the end of the presentation, of me working on like this explosion effect. I hadn't really done that much at all working in Houdini. So I had to factor in when I was bidding the time to learn that. And so you shouldn't really charge people a lot of money for you to learn something. The point is that they think that you know how to do it. But like I said, you're not going to know how to do everything. So you have to make sure that you're building that time for yourself in that to learn it. And understand that like there is a boundary to how much you should push yourself in a project. Like when you're first starting to work, it's a bit more okay, and I think it's like I did it myself. A lot of people do it. Like you're always going to be a bit more willing to take on work that is lower paying or isn't paying at all, just to get that experience, get that credit, increase your skills. But usually when you're in that position, just kind of take a step back. And if I know like it could be very exciting to work on something that's cool, to have a cool opportunity, but take a second to think about it and just go with your gut, because usually your gut will tell you like, okay, this is something that's actually like I'm going to be fairly compensated for this. I'm not being taken advantage of. And then obviously you could do some rapid R&D just to test, even if this is something that's viable for you to do, so that you don't make a promise that you can't keep in with taking on this gig. So just be realistic. Is it really worth the risk in terms of like, it might be good money, but you might ruin a relationship. You want to like, is the experience worth it? Is the like, if it's a big name or a big company or audience, that could be something like a reason for you to push and actually just like take that risk. But just be aware of these factors, because this is something that I didn't even anticipate. when I started freelancing, but it immediately came up even with the first few projects. You're gonna have people that don't pay a lot at all that are asking for the craziest thing that if they went to a normal studio, they'd be paying $20,000-$30,000 for a single shot. So know where you're at, and don't dig yourself in a hole. Try to work with the client to manage your expectations. And I think that will keep you afloat in this. So when you're actually doing the bid itself, there's a whole list of things that you kind of need to do here. So you don't want to, there's things that you don't want to share, there's things that you do want to share. It's another thing where it's like a dance. So you don't want to give the hourly breakdown because you don't want to have complete transparency with the client and have them see, okay, oh, well, he's going to take 30 hours to do this task and 20 hours to do this other task. Well, then I just don't want him to do that 20-hour task. I'll just do it myself, because then they'll see, okay, well, now if I'm paying him for that, I'm just going to start taking each piece away so that I can pay less. So I think when we spit out a project, I'm just giving the cost per task or for the project altogether. Especially if it's like just a single shot, then I'll obviously just do for that shot, that whole project. And within that, I'm always building the overhead. It's not just like my time for my knowledge. It's also like software upkeep, my resources, everything I have, and taxes as well. These, like when you're working as a freelance artist, it's not just like, I think you should probably charge more than your rate as what you'd be charging at a studio, because you're going to be taking on all these roles. Like I said, you're going to have to cover your own costs. You're going to be paying taxes on this stuff. So, I think it's smart to not just charge your normal rate in that aspect. And then you should also, it's really important to have some terms in there for your safety. This kind of varies, but deposits and net 30s. So deposits, you could have a lot of artists, especially more experienced, will not even they won't even touch work if they don't have 50% down payment from the client. And I've personally never done that, just because I haven't worked on, like, I've worked with people that I trust and that I work with a lot, or just like work on smaller projects. So I don't really, haven't done that much yet, but net 30s is a huge thing. And that's basically that upon the completion of the project, that you be paid, and like you sending the invoice, that you be paid within 30 days. And that's important, to kind of ensure that you do get that money and that they're not going to drag it out and it be a year down the line and them still say, oh, we're going to pay you, but that check never shows. So it's important to have that. It's also important to have a revision limit in this line of work. The client is probably going to ask for a lot of different, they're going to have notes, they're going to ask for different things. They might even try to come to you after the fact of saying, okay, the shot's final, it's great. Come to you later being like, oh, hey, can you also just like change this thing for another version? It's like, no, like if you need to set a number that you're not going to go beyond, unless discussed for a specific shot. Otherwise you need to you'll need to make a revised bid and make that understood to them, because some clients will just kind of keep going with it. You also need to take into account overage. So you have a deadline that you're working with, and you might be scheduling as a freelance artist, you're working on different projects. You might be scheduled to work on something 3 weeks from now. So if this project isn't done in 3 weeks, they're gonna have the client's gonna have to understand that they're gonna have to pay more for you to keep working with it. And if you're like, if it's not done in this many hours, then if it's not done in these 3 weeks and you need more, then it's gonna have to go further and you're gonna have to pay me more. And then on top of that, you have any OT and rush costs, that comes up with me a lot. Just because clients will need something fixed quickly for a commercial and they'll ask for it tomorrow. And normally that work would take me, if I was working on a normal schedule, it might take me 3 or 4 days and they want it tomorrow. So I'm gonna charge a lot more just because now I'm gonna be up all night doing this. And obviously I have the choice to not do it, but given that freelance isn't like it's not a given that you're gonna get work. You don't know how much you're gonna get. It could be a lot for, it's up and down. So sometimes you just take what you can do. So OT is a big thing to keep in mind here, and laying that out to the client is really important, so they don't feel like you're just kind of, hiking the price all of a sudden for no reason. And then last, and I think one of the most important is any, so having some terms for canceled work. So any work that is awarded after the bid and the signing of the contract, anything that you started working on or completed, that if they cancel it, if they omit that, if they cancel the project, that you are still paid either a percentage that reflects how far along you got with that shot or that project, or the full cost. Just to save you, because the biggest fear is that you work on something halfway or even, God forbid, completely, and that the client just ends up canceling it and says, oh well, we don't need it, like we can't pay you. That's just like unacceptable. So you want to make sure that you are, putting that safeguard there for yourself. So that's kind of like the terms and stuff for breakdown in the bidding. And then beyond that, obviously, like I said, you need to establish the deadlines for when things need to be done and any assumptions for what the client is going to provide to you for you to be able to complete the job, whether that's like assets or extra plates, things like that. And like I kind of touched on in the last slide, it's really important here to have a boundary. The worst experiences that I've had are working on like smaller projects that have like small budgets. Usually people that don't have a lot will try to like, especially that you didn't know them beforehand, they'll just kind of try to pull everything out of you because they often don't know much about visual effects. Because they might be handling a lot of different roles, but if they're, working on a film or something, they'll expect a lot of you, they'll ask for a million revisions. So just be wary of that. And if you get into that position, which like I said, I found it effective to just kind of, if you just blame it on the complexity of the work, like the time needed, your resources. Don't blow up at people, don't cut off relationships completely. And just, keep things civil overall. Also beware of any people that try to pay you via favors or any sort of like non-monetary compensation. That just don't accept that. I don't think that's a good idea. A lot of people will try to say like, oh well, you'll get experience and credits. Like they'll pay you with like a credit for a job, and I don't think that that's like a good way of operating. I understand for people that, if it's like an internship type of role, but you have to be wary that there are people even on LinkedIn now that are asking for senior artists where they're just like senior artist work and they're not paying, but they just want it, like they're just gonna give you a credit. Like that's not, I think if you can avoid it, like don't put yourself in that situation, because a lot of the time those people are just gonna be asking the most of you. So say you're awarded the work, the bid went well, everything's agreed. You're gonna be given the material and then you push forward, you start working. And the second you start, everything's set into place. You're gonna have to meet those deadlines, and unless they're pushed back, you should expect to get everything done with as much time as possible reasonably. Like, don't necessarily, you don't have to go and do overtime to, you know, try to finish it within 2 days if you realistically would just finish it in 5 days and it's due in 2 weeks. But just always, I think it's really important to always plan to have it done with time to spare, because there's always going to be notes. A lot of clients, when you're setting up deadlines, they'll ask for like a first pass, or, you know, we'll check in these days, these times. So it's good to always be making progress, and just to plan to be done with time to spare. I found it beneficial. It's kind of optional. Just to send like updates in general. Clients really seem to like that I've worked with. Especially on smaller projects where it's not as formal. They just like when they see that you're engaged, you're working on stuff. Just kind of sending them updates of whether it's like a little screen grab, or just kind of an email update about where you're at. They appreciate that. But if you ever are sending anything, any work that you send over before you finish the gig and you invoice, don't send it at full resolution, and send it with some sort of watermark. I put 2 examples on the bottom here of just like different watermarks you can use. Because the last thing you want to do is send over, you know, a version, and now they have it and they just kind of hold on to that, and they could just walk away. And I know obviously you have a contract and things, but just don't put yourself in a situation in which they can take the work and just run with it, and own it just because you sent over the thing before the project was completed and you were paid. So that's a pretty important thing to do there. So as you finish, let's say the client approves it, everything's all good. From there, you'll sign the invoice, and then like I said, you'll submit the full resolution work without watermarks. And then if you had net 30 or whatever, you'll be paid within 30 days. So you did it. You completed your first freelance gig. It's pretty exhilarating. It really depends on what you're working on. Like I said, there's some projects where it's an insanely quick turnaround, and then there's other ones like a day, where I'm basically working nonstop, or it could be months long. So that's a really fun thing about freelance. You never know where you're going to get into, the type of work, the amount of work. It's a pretty exciting process to be involved in all parts of it, to be talking with the client throughout the whole thing. Like I said, just taking on all these different roles. So an example that I want to show quickly is a project that I recently worked on, where this client came to me with the idea that they wanted to blow up this stage at a beauty pageant, kind of like sending the actress off stage. So we met, they gave me their vision, they gave me some reference, which was just like a YouTube video of some explosion that they had seen. And given that this was, like I had talked about before, this was something I'd never done before, I had to kind of steer them, giving them some like tips and just guidance about like, okay, well, we could do it this way, it'll be cheaper. And one that was true, like if I told them like, hey, let's consider doing this locked off instead of you, because they originally wanted to like have a moving camera moving around the environment, and I said, like, we can do it like that, but it's gonna be a lot cheaper, a lot easier if we do it locked off. So that saved me a lot of time, a lot of issues, and it saved them money. So that was just a little gentle push that really helped, especially given that even though this was like a month-long turnaround, it was still a lot for me to take on while working on other things. And just all the time that I had to spend with learning and dealing with issues. So I got all of the details from them on like camera movement, frame composition, lighting choices, props, anything that was going to be on in the shot. And then we kind of talk through and establish any materials that I'm going to need from them, like them grabbing extra plates of the curtains moving, different lighting conditions, stuff like that. So yeah, I sent them the bid. We worked from there. They once they started production, they called me from on set, and I did some kind of not on, not I wasn't on set, but on set supervision. Just kind of like they walked me around the set. I directed a few little things, gave them some pointers, had them fix a couple things just to make sure that it was shot in a way that wasn't gonna. It was basically just to set us up for success. And on set, I had them grab those extra plates, like I said, and then take a bunch of pictures to create an HDRI for the scene. And then so once they sent over the materials, the final shots and the plates, I then build out the models all in Houdini. I built out the models, did a bunch of R&D for it, just different ways of how it could look. Sent those early tests to the client just to see what they thought about, like basically art directing the look for the explosion and the fracturing of the stage. Then from there, like actually textured everything, built out the CG lighting to match the lighting of the plate. Then about 2/3 of the way into the process, I did the first low res rough renders to bring into Nuke to start doing the comp work, because I didn't want to like completely finish, just like at a studio. You'll kind of start working on, if you're compositing some CG, you'll be working on versions that aren't the final necessarily from CG. They'll just be sending you working versions for you to comp. Just because with timelines, it's not really efficient or it doesn't make much sense to wait until the CG itself is in the final state for you to start doing your job. So once I had it in a pretty good spot, brought it into Nuke, started comping it because there was a lot of comp work to do, and just continued working on the comp while I also simultaneously was wrapping things up with the effects, making other changes, and adding those realistic touches. And then finally rendered the full res effects when I had the comp basically done, and then exported it for the client to review. So this was the final product. I don't have the actual. They haven't posted the video yet, so I don't know what they did with the screen shake, but I just threw some of my own on there. But yeah, that was the first thing I'd ever done in terms of pyro effects or anything in Houdini. And I thought it turned out pretty well. The client really, really liked it. So I was like thrilled. And it was honestly like a breakthrough thing for me because this was like the ultimate, hey, like to myself, I don't know how to do this at all, but I'm gonna push through, and I think I'm confident enough in being able to, figure this out. I had enough experience in the program and being in these situations in which I can kind of figure this out. I wouldn't have accepted the job or told the client that I could do it if I knew I couldn't. But I don't know if I'm ever gonna run across this exact situation again where they want to blow up a stage. So just like the next project could be something completely different and totally unique that I never would have expected. So it was a really good experience. It was just me learning. I learned an insane amount, and it was a really good, it's built a really good relationship with that client, and it's looking like I am to be getting some work in the future from them, which is really great.
Jacob, could you play it again?
Yeah. Oh.
Sweet. Looks awesome. Great job.
Thank you. And there's already a million things that I'm like, oh my God, I wish I did that differently. Like the smoke fades off too fast. But I just kind of, hacked things together to make things work because there's things that I still didn't know perfectly how to do. So I just I knew they were gonna cut it quickly because they have other shots they're cutting too. So I just wanted to make it look right for when they really needed it. But I still think it turned out pretty well for how much time I had and what they wanted. So as long as they're happy, that's really all that matters here. But yeah, I feel like this whole presentation is just a really, really a much weaker version of what this book is. So I really recommend just reading that. Like I appreciate you guys coming to listen to me, and then like also me just like completely losing my train of thought for a minute and kind of freaking out there. But yeah, this book is amazing. I I'm guessing you guys all know the person, one of the authors. So
Maybe.
yeah, just maybe. But yeah, there a lot basically everything I talked about here is in there. Much more in depth and much better laid out. So do what you gotta do with that. And then this was just I threw it in there just to talk about because I know this is like the big thing right now. AI. Everyone's worried about it like threatening our industry. And I just wanted to say some stuff about it. I'm obviously I don't know anything, but nor does anyone. But there are some objective truths to it, and one of those is that AI has always been in visual effects, at least in the past 10 years or so, whatever. It's been a part of a lot of the tools that we work with, in terms of tracking, rotoscoping, like Rotobrush and AE, Copycat and Nuke now has been a thing for a few years. Programming with like scripts and tool creation. It's been a part of visual effects, and I think that with things like Sora coming out, it's being pushed in a way where it seems like this new thing that's going to completely take over. But I think AI is realistically going to just be used in the way that it's already been used, and that's as a tool. Even since I've been started working in this industry, I've already seen like a lot of things come out, just like with Copycat, that can speed up a lot of really mundane tasks and help us do things faster, more efficiently. So I think it's less of a threat to creativity in general, just more of like a threat, I guess, threat to those tasks that we don't like doing to begin with, and we're already trying to speed up. A lot of this AI is legitimately built off of other people's work and other people's creativity. So there is a limit to that, and it's all just iterations of that. So I'm not personally as worried about it threatening, you know, that sort of side of the industry. It, and with that, I think that a big thing that a lot of these people that are just like pushing Sora are all about, they don't realize that, working at a studio, the stuff, the videos that it's pumping out, it wouldn't survive the first round of client feedback. Just because client might, even if something looks realistic and actually everything makes sense, the client might be like, oh, this looks great, but can you change this? Like, oh, this scene of a forest looks great, but can you make like this tree like this much shorter or something like that? And no matter how many words you put into the prompt, like it's never going to be able to figure that out. So I don't think it's something to worry about, at least for a while in that aspect. I think that it doesn't operate in the same way that like the way that the visual effects is built up now. it allows for a lot of different iterations, a lot of changes to be made programmatically, just in how you set up your scripts, how you build out a file, how you build out the shot. We kind of do that as artists in anticipation that the client is going to have notes and want us to change things. And the way that, you know, AI images are created, I don't think it's feasible to really do that and make those changes with that. So we'll see, but I don't have like I don't know. I don't think it's going to be a big issue. And in general, like with having these tools, like speeding up workflows, everything is going to be faster, but I don't think that it means like faster and cheaper production. It means that there's going to be less opportunities. I think it's going to mean that more people can make cooler things. And especially with freelance, like you can start, you know, you could do a lot more. If you learn how to use these tools and integrate them into your own workflow, whether in freelance or as studio, like you're going to be able to do a lot more and just kind of become this powerhouse. And that's kind of the whole goal here. So I think that the whole AI thing is a fad. It's just a bunch of buzzwords, and like you can go on LinkedIn or Reddit or whatever and hear a lot of people spitting like the most insane rhetoric or just like are in complete doomer mindset. But I just think it's kind of a fad. It's kind of like crypto or 3D printers. Like everyone thinks it's going to change everything, and like people are gonna when 3D printers came out, people thought that, you know, factory workers, like everything's going to change, but it's kind of just being pushed as the narrative right now. It's the new big thing. I don't know if it's like there's a lot of issues with it. There's a lot to figure out still. I wouldn't be too concerned about it. The unions are like already like putting up protections against it. And hopefully some of that spills over into protections for visual effects just because of how, you know, visual effects and production workers and stuff like that are kind of tied together. But pretty kind of off topic. Yeah, it was just kind of an off topic thing. I just wanted to mention it because I felt like it's such a big thing, like a big discussion in the field right now. And I know a lot of people are worried, a lot of people are scared, but I think the more you look into it, the more it's um, not something necessarily, it's not what it's made out to be. So, yeah, I see there's a lot of chats, but I'm guessing these aren't all questions. So,
No, I think you're good.
okay, cool.
You're just spurring conversation. What's your
Sweet.
insights?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, as I said, I don't know anything, but I just hate when people are online and they are talking about how speaking as if they do know everything about this. Like every day things change, but I don't know, a lot of people in the industry are pushing back, and people that aren't even in the industry, that like consumers are pushing back because I think there's a lot of general negativity now towards AI just because people are starting to see how it can, like the implications of it and how it can affect the entire world. And
Yeah.
I don't know, machine generated creativity is just kind of, it's kind of ironic. I don't know.
Yeah. Even CG in general, people are like blinking eyes, being like, "Oh, CG," because like
Yeah,
that
yeah,
whole news with the Barbie behind the scenes stuff I was just saying in the chat is like, why would they
Oppenheimer.
do that? It's like so stupid. They just keyed out the blue screen and the behind the scenes footage just to say it was practical. It's like, first of all, it's a horrible key. Secondly, that's very insulting.
yeah. Oh my, yeah. The anti CGI stuff is crazy too.
You've got Mr. Barbie here. Don't say too much.
Oh, Preston's here.
Sorry.
Feel like with AI, there might be even like CG, it might just be like if it's absolutely necessary. So like, or like a mix of like practical with CG, like at the core of like using proper plates instead of just like being like everyone's in a blue box. It will be like no, there's actual stuff there. It's just used to enhance, like how I think in like some of the Avengers movies, like they had like a rough like costume, but because of like the way that the costumes would have to look, it would be really hard to find a fabric to realistically work like that and look the way that they wanted to. So they needed it to be CG. If that makes any sense. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like people still want practical because it just like looks great, but then like there's a lot of things that you have to enhance with CG. So like there's just a bigger mix. And I know that like I know Kung Fu Panda 4 in movies they said that they used AI for some of like the transitions for the chameleon. I think it's honestly just like more inferential like key framing of like the in-betweens, in my opinion. But I don't know. I wasn't there for that part.
Yeah. It's still the core creative decisions just still being made by humans, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Same thing with sound. Like there's a relatively new plugin called Hush, which is like really good at isolating sound. And apparently the show that I work on for the past 14 years has not had great recorded audio, but so it's now like with Hush, it's like well, that kind of sounds like it was recorded in a studio. Like are we sure? Like we might need to back off and make it sound more like we actually recorded it on location, which is pretty cool. But so still kind of scary, but it's still just a tool. Like you're gonna have to need someone to operate it to like judge how much you use, like what, and like just all the details of that. I don't know.
So much of it is narrative and marketing, right? Like the whole Oppenheimer and Barbie thing with the pushback on CG and that this is all practical when it's like kind of misrepresentation is that's kind of what the press is hot on, and like the the audience is kind of eating it up, and it just goes in waves and trends. But yeah, it is unfortunate, Eric, to hear artists who are doing invisible work kind of getting thrown under the bus. Like, no, you didn't do any work. This is like I heard an interview recently of I think the director is working on the new Alien, saying that, oh, we're doing this practically, and when really pressed on it, it's like, no, well, we have practical stand-ins, but those are all being replaced in post with CG. It's like, okay, that there is a reason for that, right? The talent can interact with something that's more convincing, and it makes the on-set experience better. But at the end of the day, there's still plenty of VFX, CG, and compositing going on to make the final frame.
Yeah, that's the same thing with the recent Mission Impossible movies. Like they did do practical stunts on a train or, flying off of the cliff, but they still had to do a bunch of VFX to hide it because, stunt money,
I think the Top Gun Maverick too, all practical flying, all flying you see is practical. Every single jet you saw was replaced. Like, so yes, there were plates taken, but everything was replaced in CG, and they didn't, make that apparent. Just the fact that it was done practically.
Yeah.
A lot of smart. Yep.
Ridley Scott one with Napoleon makes me giggle, where it's like they're saying it's all practical and they're watching a VFX breakdown.
Massive Napoleonic Wars. It's like, man, can you imagine the cost of those days? Oh my God. Thousands and thousands of extras. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, totally. Well, Jacob, this was great. Absolutely love this.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I'm glad you got out of it. I felt like I just ranted a lot. I think it was just a lot of information for me to try to cover.
True. Yeah.
In a small amount of time. So hopefully you guys got something good out of it.
Definitely.
Gold. Excellent.
We've been planning this one for a while now, so I think you just had so much saved up.
I definitely did.
Cool. Well, I'm going to shut it off. Thank you, Jacob.
Thank you.
Many more to come in the future, I'm sure.